Welcome to Digital Currents, brought to you by Morgan Creek Digital. I'm Xavier Segura. Each episode, we spotlight the topics and people changing the tech industry with a focus on AI, blockchain, chips, and big data. Thanks for listening, and please make sure to subscribe if you like what you hear. And remember, stay current.
Hey, Mark, we caught you on a different day today. So I guess we'll say happy almost Friday and welcome to Digital Currents.
We're getting together this Friday for our annual holiday celebration. We do a little Habitat for Humanity build and then luncheon with the whole Morgan Creek crew. So very excited about that. So we're recording on Wednesday. Wear pink Wednesday. I always wear my pink on Wednesday. So we're not exactly met, although we're a little color coordinated with the orange and blue. And I'll do a quick reveal. No orange or green. I just regular jeans today. But I do as always have my sock game on. But I have the Chilly Willy socks. Just chill and put your Bitcoin in cold storage and hang out on the beach. And I wish I could be on a beach today. It is cold here in North Carolina. I'm wearing the sweater, but chill has been okay, right? I mean, since we were together a week ago, Bitcoin price is kind of the same. It's had a little bit of vol, over the last month. It's still down double digits, about 13%. But I feel like there's been a support level and a number of big news stories, which we'll talk about. So, it's better than at 83 when people were talking, oh, it's going to 60. Oh, it's going to 50. Oh, it's going to 0. I think the 451st Bitcoin is dead story was written. I mean, it's amazing to think that there have been that many stories that have just been so wrong. And that they just keep trotting it out. Like yesterday, well, there's lots of stuff we can talk about, but.
Yeah, it really seems like, Mark, when it comes to calling the Bitcoin price or really the Bitcoin rise and fall, there really is no QA. Really, there's no filter that will kind of hit before, those editors hit send. But I think as we kind of find ourselves towards, that upper low 90 mark, you start seeing, well, what will it take to get us, over the century mark? Would it be more prudent measures of leverage? And I remember during our Hyperliquid show when we were saying, the paltry 5 to 10x leverage positions are not, out there enough as much as the 30, 50, 100. Yeah. I think that's something that, will get us to 100, but we may not stay there very long. Do you think we have a chance towards the end of the year to actually see the century mark?
Sure. Anything's possible. Look, it's Fed Day today, and we're recording this on Wednesday, December 10th, for release, later in the week. And it's Fed Day, and the Fed's most likely going to cut by 25 basis points. There are some, arguing that he should cut 50, and we need money, more monetary stimulus. Like, come on, y'all. First of all, there's never been a series of rate cuts when we were growing at 3.5% GDP. So now someone I was talking to this morning said, no, it's not about the GDP. It's about jobs. Job growth is slowing and more unemployment, and AI is killing all the jobs. Like, yeah, fine. Job growth is definitely slowing. We're still very low unemployment. There's still more people dropping out of the workforce in terms of, the boomers that are retiring. But I will give one bone, I guess, to the crew that says we need more rate cuts. I don't think we need more rate cuts, and I think it'd be a mistake to cut rates. But the one bone I'll give them is if you take the AI data center build out of GDP, it's closer to 0 this year. So the nonsense of spending all this money to build buildings to house chips that are probably going to be obsolete in 24 to 36 months. And I'm not saying that no one's ever going to use a GPU again, but we've already seen models trained using only TPUs. We've got a company that's building the next generation of TPUs called LPUs. We've got another company building a new generation of chips that would obviate the need for the brute force side of GPU. So again, I'm just not a believer that, if something's inefficient, the best way to fix it is to just use more of it. I've never really believed in that. I like just make it more efficient. But lots of stuff going on. And at the end of the day, oh no, my point was it's Fed day. So if the Fed cuts rates and there's monetary stimulus, in theory, right? If the growth rate of the debasement increases, meaning there's more fiat dollars, then the price of Bitcoin, because remember, one Bitcoin is always one Bitcoin. But to me, it's a coin toss at this point, because there's not the massive incremental demand that you need to cause a price squeeze. Meaning, everybody's like, well, there were all these excess sellers. There's never excess sellers. There's never excess buyers. There's always the same number. Transactions happen. But there was an unwinding of levered positions that caused the 126 down to 83. But in order to go back up towards the century mark, you need incremental demand. And while there's, I would say, solid incremental adoption, Vanguard said that now their clients can buy it, but a lot of their clients are like, heck to the no, I don't care. I'm happy. I'm in my boomer 60-40 portfolio and I don't need anything else. And that's been working, and Nvidia is better than Bitcoin. So I'm just going to stick with it. So that'll change, but I think it's going to take some time. And I do worry. In fact, I was just before we started recording, I was with these interesting couple guys. They are Chicago traders, like literally guys off the Chicago trading floor, back when there was a physical outcry like Ferris Bueller. And then they migrated into the electronic age and did computer-based trading. And basically, if you're in what's called the CTA business, the commodity trading advisor business, the traditional markets have basically gone stone cold, right? The computer trading is narrowed the vol. So there's just no vol, which is what you live on in commodity trading in the traditional markets. There's still a lot of vol in digital markets. Bitcoin vol is still 50. It's come down from 70 or 80, but it's still 50. ETH vol is still 70. XRP, that lovely coin, 90 vol. So if you are an options trader or an old style kind of pit trader, you can still make some money there. So I do think there's some increment, but that's not net buying, right? That's just trading. So, generally speaking, I think the vol will continue to clamp down and become more institutionalized, and we'll get increasing adoption, increasing usage, but it's just going to take some time. So we'll see.
Yeah, and then that point, Mark, that you mentioned about vol compression, the implied vol, as you said, is right there around 50%. That could make the case against some of that year-end jump. But the stock market is gonna react in some ways a little bit more excitedly to the news of the rate cut. We are already seeing Dow up 200 points. Now, I think we will just miss it as we're recording an hour before the
yeah, look,
decision at 2, but that's sort of where.
That's a very important point, right? I mean, he's going to do it at 2:00. We'll be finishing up recording right then. Maybe we'll go over by a minute just to see what happens. Yeah. And you know what's interesting is I think he's just going to give in to the pressure that people want him to cut rates, even though he knows he probably shouldn't cut rates, and he'll do 25. There are some, including our partner Pomp, who was on this morning saying, "Oh, he definitely needs to do 50," and nah. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to do 25 and it's going to be perceived as a hawkish cut, which is a total oxymoron. It's like jumbo shrimp. I mean, if you cut rates, that's dovish, not hawkish. But by saying, and you knew I was going to go here, that what that is similar to what ESPN is doing about this college football playoff nonsense, where all the talking heads from ESPN are spewing nonsense, like literally lies. And they figure like, if we say it often enough, people will accept it as truth. Like, no, it's not the way it works, right? I mean, you can say over and over again that Miami deserved to be in, and that they didn't get in because no one from the ACC got in. But the head of the committee actually slipped up and said, yeah, because Virginia lost and Duke didn't qualify, we had to have someone from the ACC. I'm like, no, you actually don't. And in fact, there's no rule that says you do. But, ESPN owns the broadcast rights to the ACC, and it's an extra $4 million. So, hey, say the quiet part out loud. But saying that it's going to be 50 so that people perceive it negatively when it's 25 so that you can get short and make money. And I'm not saying that's what Pomp was doing, but I think there are people out there who they spew a narrative so they can position to make money. And we're going to see tomorrow that at 155, somebody puts on a big position that magically was exactly what the Fed chair decided to do. And I love it. And I also love the part about this is like, they're like, well, what color tie is he wearing? And which hand is he carrying the briefcase in? And how does he start it? Does he say good afternoon or does he say hello? I mean, it's crazy that we hang on every word of a system that really shouldn't even exist, right? There should be no one to price fix the cost of money. That should be done by the markets.
Well, you're not totally off there, Mark, because if you recall the last time that we went and saw this movie, there was one thing about how markets reacted towards the announcement, and then there was another reaction about the comments by said chair in the economic outlook, which were two totally different things. It really spooked markets. But I want to kind of pull on something that you mentioned about media and a story that we broke last week about the big merger between Netflix and Warner Brothers. We called it, Mark. We'll say it again, that Paramount was not going to go gentle.
No. Mr. Ellison was going to get involved.
They came quite aggressive, Mark, with the hostile, almost Chinese style, all cash bid, $30 per share, really driving up the price here. And I am curious to see, where this goes with Paramount. This was in some ways their baby all along. Obviously there was a cozying up to DJT over the weekend. And I love that there was also a comment from Tencent that said, we would have bid, but we were concerned about the potential implication on national security. That seemed a little bit
national security on cartoon characters and superheroes. No, it's all, look, the national security issue is the control of media and control of narrative. And look, it's bad for any one company to control all of the media, right? We've all seen the James Bond movie about the, the Rupert Murdoch character who
Yeah.
controlled and this was the European version. But look, the Ellison family has quietly bought up most of the media assets and is increasingly looking monopolistic here. And when you are monopolistic in the media business, you can control not just what people see, but how they see it and how they interact.
So, kind of like reminds me, Mark, of some of the stories that are coming out now around the AI side, and wondering if you have any thoughts here. So this was the latest in kind of the AI announcement that I'm sure that you caught regarding NVIDIA, that now they are allowed to ship the H200 AI chips to approved customers in China. But the caveat, US gets a 25% cut. So I think this was always the way this was going to go, Mark.
Let's just unpack that for a second. So
yes.
So they passed a law, literally a law, that, or maybe it might have been executive order. It's probably an executive order saying that it was illegal to sell NVIDIA chips to Chinese nationals because of national security concerns. Like, I'm not exactly sure what, like, are we embedding national secrets on the chips so they're concerned about? I mean, the opposite might be true. Like, if we bought Huawei chips and used them in, computers that had access to government secret, maybe, or they could have, I mean, heck, everyone uses TikTok, which is gathering our data and giving it back to the Chinese, and now it's owned by the Ellisons. Wait, did it all come back to the Ellisons again? That's crazy. So I don't really understand the national security concerns, but maybe there's some. But then it's like, well, we didn't mean national security. We just meant national bribery. So basically, if you give us 25%, you can do it. That is, like I said, it's like the CFP. It's like the quiet stuff out loud. Like, you're telling me that a 9-3 Alabama team should be in, and like, oh, well, the conference championship doesn't count. Well, there have been 18 conference championships since the advent of the CFP, and 17 of them got downgraded because of the conference championship. Only one didn't, and that was Alabama this year. So, and in 2023, Florida State was undefeated and got kicked out in favor of Alabama because their quarterback got hurt. I'm like, well, but it's not a single player game, right? I mean, they had a backup quarterback,
right.
and then they're like, oh, but the coaches were out too. I'm like, well, Ole Miss just lost half their coaches, and you're letting them in. Well, but they're in the SEC. I mean, and again, they're saying the quiet part out loud. And look, I don't think you should exclude a team if their coaches leave. Don't penalize the kids. I mean, if they get beat, they get beat. But holy moly, it's crazy. And so, not saying the quiet part out loud used to be the norm. Now we just like, hey, bribery, it's all good. As long as you pay us, you can do whatever the heck you want.
Yeah, and for the avoidance of doubt, Mark, the same approach will apply to AMD and Intel. So we don't want to, exclude them. Speaking of the CFP, and there are some beliefs that Chinese President Xi is responding positively to the plan. So I wonder, is there some other incentive that's happening there?
Well, I mean, Xi's response is great. Like, he didn't have to pay it. It's kind of like the myth of, Mexico is going to build the wall, or the people who sell the goods are going to pay the tariffs. No, they're not. I mean, if a company has to pay more, then the company that has to pay them more will pass that on to customers. Anyone looked at prices of anything lately? They are significantly higher. But that's why we have this K-shaped economy issue. Is prices going up to rich people? It doesn't matter. They get plenty of money. I mean, yeah, but because their assets go up more than the prices. But people who don't have a lot of assets, it hurts. And, when you got to pay more for your phone or your, computer or worse, right? You get less for the same price, right? You get a computer that doesn't have the fastest chips, or you get a, lawnmower that doesn't have enough torque to cut your grass, right? I mean, I don't know. We're in a weird place, but.
So Mark, in a story, now we're getting close to the end of the year, and we will save for a later episode the famous Mark Yusko predictions in January. Maybe we'll do that to kick off the new year. But before we kind of look ahead, we want to look back on the year that was slightly. Yeah. So in a surprise to nobody, ChatGPT was Apple's most downloaded app of 2025 in the US. And I think, Mark, if you want to call AI as being a bubble, or let's call more specific, agentic AI as being in a bubble, then ChatGPT is right there at the zenith of this. But if you kind of look at the numbers, it is pretty astounding to just see the size that they've been able to get to at this level. And we're the fastest to 100 million. They continue to scale. Every update brings tens more millions into the fold, and they were followed by Threads, TikTok, WhatsApp, Instagram, YouTube, and a host of others. So last year, ChatGPT was number 4.
Yeah.
And it was actually number 1 was Chinese Temu. So now
it's amazing. As you say, it is amazing, and it actually is it's a very good tool, and humans armed with tools become superhuman, right? I mean, I can lift more with a lever than I can by myself. I can, type, I can create content faster with the computer than I can by myself. I can search the internet faster with a good browser than I can by myself. And so, but the challenge remains valuation, right? Is if you think about things that have scaled, like Netflix almost went bankrupt twice because it wasn't growing and they were losing a lot of money. So, they sent out the discs and they'd break and they'd get lost and they were losing money, and it wasn't very scalable because there wasn't great distribution of advertising, and you kind of heard about it from word of mouth, but it was fine. And then they tried video on demand, and that got a little better. But once the internet and broadband and people could download in minutes, it all started to work. And then there was the virality of you could send you an email and you could get 5 months for free or whatever. And so all that was good. But then they got to this plateau where growth started to slow, and their revenues and their expenses were growing, and like, and stock would go down. And like, all right, we're going to increase the price. If you increase the price, people will cancel. And people did. But the increase in price was more than the people that canceled. And so stock went back up. And they have pricing power because it's not like free, but it's pretty darn cheap relative to the value that you get. Now there'll come a point, like I'm getting to that point with YouTube TV. YouTube TV started at $50 a month, and it's pretty good, and I liked it. And then it went to 60, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And I think it just went to 70 or 75, and I'm like, now you're starting to cost as much as cable, like,
right.
And anyway, but the problem I have with ChatGPT is you got this great user growth, but the number of paid users is still very small, and it's not really growing that fast. People like me who use it for free, and when I get to my limit every day of 5, I'm like, okay, I'll just go to DeepSeek. That is a problem, but the real problem is the amount of money they burn. I mean, $10 to $12 billion this year, like incinerated, like lit on fire, and yet a valuation of 500 billion. No, right? And I think part of it, there's this shock and awe factor. We just saw it again this morning, or maybe it was yesterday afternoon, with SpaceX saying they're going to go public at 1.5 trillion. Like, you can't just say that and make it so. Well, I mean, you can, and they did. And so now people are acting like it's some real number, but they actually have revenue. And I don't know that they make a lot of money. I don't know if they don't, I don't know, but they have revenue. They have real revenue. And ChatGPT's revenues just aren't very big. And so the valuation doesn't make sense. I mean, it's different than like, Aramco was the first $1 trillion IPO, and they have a real business, right? They sell a lot of oil, a lot, like a lot. And so it makes sense to me that you can have an asset that has a lot of revenues and a lot of profits, be worth something. I don't know. I mean, SpaceX it's hard. That's hard. That's a hard business. But we'll see.
And on to your point, Mark, about we'll see. I know that they've just made available a huge new chunk for trade. I think it was like 2.9 billion, something very large. But as it relates, Mark, to the AI piece, in a holiday feel good story, but maybe with some dark undertones, because we know folks will listen to this on Saturday.
We have to go to Sinister Saturday. We have to, right?
Saturday. Is the AI startup. Have you heard of these guys, Mark? Tavis is an AI-powered Santa, where users can speak with Santa, and this is not just on text, but there's actually a digital face cloning video, and it's personalized. So kids and parents can talk to Santa and request things like their toys or their gift wishes, and then Santa will engage with them, so much so that they're reporting that the users are hitting their cutoff limits, chatting with Santa, quote, upwards of hours per day. So I think Santa has been replaced, is replacing a lot of people at home. And it's funny because I took my son, he did a lot of Christmas stuff this past weekend, and Santa was all over New Jersey, Mark. Santa was in our town. Santa was at the zoo. Santa was at the ice skating rink. And when my son, who's 4.5, asked, well, Dad, is that still Santa? I said, yes, Santa's using his magic car. He said, well, Santa's moving around. Shouldn't he be at the North Pole? And then now I'm finding that it's a little harder to, fool him and not fool, but give him the holiday magic.
Yeah.
So this idea of Tavis and the AI powered Santa, I think, it's the second year that it's on this. You can do all these sorts of funny things, like figure out if you're on the naughty list or the nice list. I'm not sure I'd want an AI tool telling me that, but it reminds me, Mark, of when we were speaking about the user activity on OpenAI, which is kind of relates to, and how loneliness was a big category when these chatbots were getting used so much so in not just in the the Gen Z community, the millennial community, but in older demographics that tend to be late adopters or laggards with technology. In the AI bubble, they have now been really included in a big time way, and maybe AI Santa will continue that trend.
I mean, look, we are trending in a, in what could be a positive, but I have a feeling, unfortunately, it'll end up sinister way, in the sense that, look, a chatbot is very effective and very efficient and very scalable for people who can't get out and about, right? They can't go have human contact, and they're lonely, like you said, and awesome. And the fact that it can learn and grow, awesome. And so then you say, well, okay, so if a chatbot is great, well, what about a robot, right? and you got these realistic robots now, and you're like, okay, yep, yeah, you could have a robot. I mean, it's a little creepy, kind of, to me, that you're gonna have this, robot sitting in your house, and you're just gonna talk to it instead of talking, picking up the phone, calling your family. But maybe you don't have family or whatever. But then it goes down the whole path of where it's like why is it that every Grok AI image is a anime type woman? It's never an anime type man. It's never a fully clothed person. It's a scantily clad anime exaggerated female. Okay. Why is it that OpenAI said we're lifting the ban on people using OpenAI ChatGPT for XXX rated stuff? That's a weird dynamic, right? So you can go down that path and say, oh, I don't like that future, right? Because cure and loneliness, love it, right? And you could do it with a call center, right? You could have call centers that take calls from people. But if you could just talk to your computer, talk to your phone, okay, that'd be better. And I do think there's a real use case there. The talk to Santa one, I think, is problematic, because what happens when mom and dad didn't get the memo from Santa to be the helper, and you told Santa all these things that you wanted, and Santa said, oh, sure. And then you don't get any of them. Like, doesn't that cause stress? Or, I mean, and maybe that's not what Santa does. I haven't tried the tool, but I don't know. If you say, I would like a new Porsche Carrera, does Santa say, well, I'm sorry, you're only 7, so you can't have that? Or does Santa say, oh, well, what color would you like? I don't know.
Well, I don't know the answer to that as well, Mark, but I do know that it's getting more inquisitive. So if you say, I want a PlayStation, then Santa is almost designed for the upsell and says, well, what kind of games would you want for your PlayStation? Yeah. So I think that there is going to be a natural and easy way. Let us not fear as parents. There will be a potential sales opportunity, upsell for a sales channel, which actually I think could be a brilliant idea, and also very dangerous.
Look, I mean, my daughter, right, who has 3 and a 4th on the way, 3, 5, and 7, has had the experience where a package shows up on her front porch that a 3, 5, or 7-year-old pushed the button. Okay, where they took her phone and they can now navigate to Amazon. That's a problem, right? I mean, and nothing to the point where they couldn't afford it, but there are going to be situations where somebody orders something where I can't afford that. I mean, so, and you can return it and all that good stuff, but the consumerism part, no question. I mean, that's just going to be brutal, right? Because here's the other problem. One of the problems. Who owns your chats? We're having a lawsuit right now on this because they say, it's like when they said, I don't remember which product it was. I think it was Google or something. Oh, we don't save your search records, or we don't save your inquiries, so they can't be used against you in a court of law, right? Or no, it was Alexa. It was Alexa. Oh, we don't save the conversations. They lied. And in fact, they had tape of, employees laughing about what they had recorded. And so, okay, now you've got all this stuff I asked. Well, what if I asked for something that you don't deem appropriate? Like, are you going to turn that into authorities? Or what if you mistook something? Like, what if I said, I don't know what it could be, but what if you made a mistake and you thought I asked for X and I asked for Y, and now I'm in trouble because you think I asked how to make a bomb, and I said, no, how do you make I said, what is a bomb cyclone, like in the weather, right? Not, how do I make a bomb? And now that I said that, I'm probably going to get in trouble. And I don't know, there's just so much that's a little dicey, because in that, like, if you're talking to someone and you think it's someone you can trust and you confide in them things, like, is that admissible in, like, court? Like, what
Mhm.
if you committed to doing
Yeah.
something bad? Or what if you say, hey, I want to clear my conscience? And I don't know. I don't know the rules.
Well, I think there's, it reminds me, Mark, of a big decision on the tech side that has been done in Australia. And they actually did make a decision about teen use and social media. So I'm sure that you saw this, where Australia became the first place to instill a ban on social media for those that are below the age of 16. And in a cry heard nationwide, I'm sure those 15-and-a-half-year-olds, those 14-year-olds, I mean, where will they put their dance videos, Mark? I think
Hey,
there's a
and look,
on this.
it is that time of the year. It's the holiday season. I just watched
Mhm.
this the other night, and so I can't believe I haven't seen this because it was made in 2021. 8-Bit Christmas. If you haven't seen it, sit down with your wife and kids and watch this. It's totally family
Yeah.
friendly. Such a good movie.
Excellent.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. And the one of the themes is banning video games, because it's all about this kid's quest to get a Nintendo. And the adult telling the story of when he was a kid is I can never remember his name, Barney, from How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
I can't remember his actual actor name, but love him, and he's so funny. But such a good movie. But in the movie, right, the parents try to get and they actually get a county-wide ban of video games,
Mhm.
which would cause me stress since I play so many of them. But anyway, I just thought that was,
Yeah, Neil Patrick Harris. How did we forget?
Neil Patrick Harris. Thank you. Yeah,
So
so good. He's
he's in my other secret. Super funny.
Yeah.
And
Well,
Mark,
the
I
other
got
one
a
is
guilty
the
Christmas.
dad in the movie is the guitarist from That Thing You Do. So I love him. Again, I don't know his
Well,
name
wonders.
either, but just a good
Yeah.
actor and so funny. I mean, just the facial expressions
Agreed.
and
Agreed. And that definitely is one of Neil Patrick Harris is one of my all-time favorite guilty Christmas movie pleasures. Harold and Kumar's Christmas, which puts a smile on anybody's face. Definitely not family friendly, but still very funny.
yeah,
One.
exactly.
And with
That one's not family friendly, but funny. It is funny.
not in the slightest. Yeah. We'll say that as we kind of wait for the announcement to come through, we'll shift gears, as we always say. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, a chart is worth way more than that.
10,000.
We kind of
at
look
least.
at a story that we were kind of, at least 10,000, 1,000, million, right? So 10 million. So are we going to say that when we look at things like valuation, and we spoke about slightly what's happening with the likes of OpenAI, and actually I got that number way wrong. I said 2.9 billion. It was actually, they are part of a 2.9 trillion upcoming listings on the table for privately traded firms that are looking to IPO. So I will put up this chart, which shows just how we are in a new world, Mark. And I feel like I need to figure out a different phrase for 26 to emphasize, this adjustment here, because it's really not doing it justice. But take a look at the IPO's thirst for the biggest private company. So I will share my screen, and as per usual, ask for your thoughts. And for those that are on audio only, feel free to follow us along on YouTube, where you can get
this is. I mean, the idea that we're going to have a centicorn is crazy, right? 1,000 millions, or no, 1,000 billions. So 1,000 billion, so a trillion. And look, the numbers stop having any meaning when they get disassociated from the underlying productive assets. And I think that's where we are today is it becomes a FOMO. It becomes the price is set by the marginal buyer and seller. And then we do this silly market cap saying, well, if I can sell $1 million worth at this price, then it's worth $1 trillion. I'm like, well, but if you tried to sell all of it, you wouldn't get anywhere near that price. I mean, that to me is always the myth of cap weighting. But, what we're looking at here is, the usual suspects, Stripe, which used to be kind of the poster child of high growth, go growth, innovation. I think it was like 7 lines of code or something. But everybody was integrating it, and it was this, or maybe it was Plaid, not Stripe. Sorry, but Stripe was this real business that was taking a real cut of real transactions, and still got to a crazy level. Databricks, the competitor to my son's old company, Snowflake. Look, data, as we've said, it's the new oil. So if you control the data and you control how to organize it and access it and utilize it. Remember, 85% of data gets stored and never used again. That's a crazy stat. And just lying fallow in these data lakes. But if you can actually figure out what is good data and how to utilize it, and Databricks has been pretty good at it. But even so, you eventually got to make some money. And, it's funny, Snowflake at one point was the highest valued company in history, 200 times revenues when it went public. And then it crashed. And then they did what everybody else has done in the last, 18 months. Oh, we're an AI company. Like, no, you're a data company.
Right.
Oh, no. Our data will train the AIs better because, we know where everybody's best data is. That's actually not the dumbest thing I've ever heard in the world, but a little bit silly, but and then it went, it like tripled off the bottom, and still not, I think, still trailing Databricks, which is still private versus Snowflake is public. The Anthropic number has gone from, I don't think I'm wrong, I think it was 20 billion maybe 18 months ago, maybe. And then it went to 40 something, then it went to 60 something, and then it jumped from 60 to 183 like in 4 months. And again, that's math based on like, a few $1 million traded from a secondary transaction, which is the same thing with SpaceX. A couple early investors sold to somebody else, which, call a spade here. That's not dissimilar than how the art market works, right? You hire an artist to make you something, and then you pay an appraiser to appraise it for a huge amount, and then you donate it to a museum and build a wing because you created value out of thin air, and you get a tax break to do it. So I'm not saying this is quite that bad, but to create the value of the company based on, SoftBank buying a couple shares from one of an early founder, that's kind of circular to me. But my point on Anthropic was, at least Anthropic, if you look at the chart, so another chart that we don't have is, OpenAI was up here, 85% market share, and now they're down here at 45. Still high. 45 is still high, but Anthropic started at 2 and is now at like 35 because they went after enterprise and have a more, I don't know what you call it, business friendly facade, or maybe they have better salespeople. I don't know what it is, but they started to sign up bigger enterprise customers and getting seat licenses, and so they started to catch up in terms of number of seats sold, because a lot of people like myself have OpenAI free, but I'm not paying for it. And if they make me pay for the free, then I'll just go use DeepSeek or Qwen or Kimi or whatever. So that's kind of where ByteDance, owner, well, I guess was the owner of TikTok, but they own a bunch of other assets, and they own TikTok in China, and I think every place except the United States, right? So very, very, very profitable. Like extremely profitable business. But this is where we are. We're at numbers that boggle the mind because we throw trillion around a lot, but a trillion
Yes.
is $1 a second for 31,710 years. It's just a very, very large number, and doesn't mean they're not a good company. They are. Doesn't mean that they
Right.
shouldn't be worth some multiple of their revenues, but I think their revenues are like 40 billion, something like that, maybe, but just seems like a silly number to me.
Yeah. So we'll do a 2 for here, Mark. And I guess the question to avoid the chart crime is putting things into context. So, what does this mean for and kind of average kind of year on IPO? We mentioned is 2025 the beginning of the rebound. So later in this story, we go and look at what is the overall market. And I think that this was super interesting. We have here, let me pull this up. We are a return to pre-pandemic norms. So we're not quite all the way there. I mean, gosh, 2021 was insane. But as we kind of look at this, Mark, the median, the median on the S&P is 40 billion, I believe. So, we're kind of in uncharted territory.
The average IPO return, and as you'd expect, it's cyclical. And when there are fewer IPOs, or maybe that wasn't the return of IPOs, that was the actual dollar volume. And so when the dollar volume is high, the return is usually low. When the dollar volume is low, the returns are high. So we've actually seen a number of IPOs this year, go out and double or triple. Circle was a great example. Now they do give some of that back over time, but because people, kind of look at the numbers and say, "Oh, wait a second, maybe we got a little ahead of ourselves." But one of the things I love about that last chart of the day is that, or chart of the week, is that my dog is very needy today. It's around my ankles. So when you think about what we do for a living, right? Venture capital, there's this cyclicality to it. And the cyclicality is dependent on research and ideas. And those tend to follow a longer term trend, like a 14-year trend. Then there's this trend of entrepreneurs. You need good entrepreneurs. And that tends to follow the business cycle, which is about a 7-year trend. So it overlaps with the big trend every 2 cycles. And then you need liquidity, right? You need cash. Well, that also follows the business cycle, but there's always cash around. There's what people want to invest. But then the thing that you really need is you need less capital chasing deals so you don't push the price up too much. And so when you look at a chart like that, there is an inverse relationship between the attractiveness of the vintage year and the volume of deals. And yet it's the inverse also of fundraising. It's super easy to raise money when everything is going great and everybody's psyched, but it's a really bad time to take the money. So it takes discipline to raise less money. I always quote Keith Raboy back in 21. It's like, yeah, we all lost our minds. Yep, we're all doing deals at stupid valuations, but you go first. You skip this hot deal. And then he jokes, and by the way, I'll take your allocation. So everybody gets stupid together. And then we come to our senses, slowly, one by one. And it's times like 24, 25, where volumes are super low. We've got this technology wave. We've got a lot of entrepreneurs who were displaced in the downturn in 22, 23. And so you have I hate the perfect storm. It's the opposite of the perfect storm, right? It's the confluence making it rain, right? I grew up in Seattle, and my parents used to live out near Snoqualmie Falls. I'm sure everybody's seen the pictures of Snoqualmie Falls this week because what do they call it? The atmospheric river. They always got new terms like bomb cyclone. atmospheric rivers. They had two of them converge, and Snoqualmie Falls looks like Niagara Falls. And normally Snoqualmie Falls looks like, this little tiny trickle, and it's a nice place. It's beautiful, but it looks like, Niagara Falls. And that's the confluence, right? It's a confluence of good things as opposed to the perfect storm where Marky Mark went down with the ship. Such a sad ending. Great movie, actually, but and great actor. I love Marky Mark.
Oh, and Mark, that number on SpaceX you were right on was 15 billion in revenue for 25, increasing to 22 to 24 in 26.
Yeah, so it's the 40 number that they're quoting is 2 years out. I love that part.
Right.
I mean, that is
2 years forward.
That is insane, right? It used to be that we looked at the money we actually had and we put a valuation on it. Then there was this thing about estimates, and we said, "Oh, but things are going well, so we'll estimate next year, and we'll put a multiple." But we'd put the same multiple on that. Well, now we put the forward multiple on the forward earnings, and now we're going 2 years out. I mean, look, more power to people who can get those transactions done. I said, my belief is they're all circular and it's the same people, right? And it is the Ellison family and Masa-san and Jensen and Gates. And so there's this very small circle of people who are, it's the old, I'm sure I've told the story on the show before, but there's a story about how you solve a debt problem. So this innkeeper, guy comes in the inn and says, "Hey, I want to go check out the room, see if it's acceptable for my tastes." And the guy's like, "Oh yeah, leave a 500 euro note on the desk and go ahead and look." So the guy goes upstairs. The innkeeper takes the 500 euro note and he goes off and pays his debt to the butcher, who then takes the 500 euro note and pays off the debt to the farmer, who then pays off the debt to the House of Ill Repute, who then comes back and pays off her debt to the innkeeper. And the note goes back on the table. The guy comes downstairs, takes the money, says, "I didn't like the room. I'm out of here." The whole town's debt has been resolved, but no money changed hands. It's kind of a weird thing. So this, hey, I'll buy your chips if you buy my data center, if you construct the data center, if you buy my racks, if you buy my chips, maybe it works, but to me, no money changed hands. And so OpenAI is just going to continue to churn. And I said, I don't know if SpaceX actually makes money. My guess is they don't. But if they do, great. But that's a pretty high multiple.
Yeah. And I think it's agreed. It's kind of struggling to make that math work, right, Mark? Because in the end, these just companies are really trying to push the venture model in terms of how long they can afford to stay private. But this is going to be a real test, because I feel like we have not really seen things of this size again. That median market cap is 40 billion. And these, on that one slide alone, there were 5 companies that would eclipse that by several times. And I'm trying to see if the latest word has broken yet about the decision of the Fed. It was supposed to be 2 p.m. and here we stand at 2.
25 basis points. All right, so they did what they're expected to do. They cut 25 basis points. Of course, the money go burp, money print. It's not really that much. I mean, 25 basis points is not enough. The base rate goes down to 3.5 to 3.75. It's lower than it probably should be. I mean, the base interest rate should roughly be equal to, nominal inflation, and that's probably running a little hotter. So, is what it is.
Yeah, Bitcoin has not really. Well, maybe Mark, Bitcoin's already priced this in. We'll figure out if that's the case in a couple of days.
No, I said 25 basis points is a disappointment. That's the problem.
Yeah,
25 basis points a month ago awesome, great, right? 25 basis points today because yesterday we told you they should do 50 is now a disappointment. Now we're getting a little rally because now he's talking, right? And so he made the announcement, and now he's gonna, because look, 25 basis points is a hawkish cut. No, I mean, but now he can say, oh, but before I told you that this was going to be the last one, now we're going to be data dependent. And so he's probably walking back the hawkish side and getting more dovish about 26. I mean, we'll see. The money supply is growing. And what's interesting, remember, M2 and Bitcoin were kind of like this. Money supply, I mean, the M2 growth, not the actual M2, but the M2 growth and Bitcoin were about an 18-month lag. Or maybe it's 13-month lag. I think it's 13-month lag. And then 6 months ago, it broke down. And everyone's like, oh, alligator jaws. Oh, man, it's going to be awesome. And then money supply just kept going like this, and then Bitcoin went down. People were like, what the hell? I don't understand. Like, well, remember, it's not a perfect correlation 100% of the time because of the futures market. If there were only spot, they would be perfectly correlated. But it's not only spot. If it was only spot, then in order for me to sell a Bitcoin, I actually had to sell you the Bitcoin. I had to give you the Bitcoin. Now I don't have to do that. I can sell you a Bitcoin using a future, and I can create Bitcoin out of thin air. So it's not as bad as traditional fiat, where I can do that in perpetuity. I can create a dollar that exists in perpetuity, and then it gets exaggerated because it gets deposited in the bank and fractionally reserve lent over and over. This is a little bit different because eventually I have to close that contract, and we get back to, if I have a Bitcoin that I want to sell you, I have to sell it to you. But I just think gone are the days of lockstep correlation in a world where futures manipulation can ebb and flow based on how much money BlackRock or some Saudi prince decides he wants to put in the market.
Exactly. Well, I'm glad that we were able to at least bring that point to finality in this episode, and clearly we'll unpack it a little bit more on next week. So good place for us to adjourn, and to thank our listeners as always for checking out the show. Thanks for engaging with us. Make sure to rate, review, subscribe wherever you podcast. Please continue doing so. And we will wish all of you guys a very happy holiday season. We'll come with a couple more episodes before we close the year out. Yep. And a reminder, listeners, as always, to stay current.
Thank you for joining us this week on Digital Currents. Check out our links to our website and social media in the show's description box. Please make sure to subscribe if you like what you hear. And remember, stay current.
This podcast should not be construed as investment advice nor solicitation for the sale of any security, advisory, or other service. Investment themes and ideas discussed may be owned by funds managed by the host and podcast guests. Any conflicts at the time of production have been mentioned by the host but are subject to change. Listeners should consult their personal financial advisors before making any investment decisions.